Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast, an unofficial IB podcast made by IB students for other IB students and teachers alike. And today, we have recently begun our online classes,
Yep,
except,
for about a week or two, about a week and a half now. Yeah.
yeah, and in particular, I'd say my wish came true that we got extended classes instead of time being cut in
Oh
half.
yeah.
Wouldn't you say so?
Extended class time is definitely a thing that they're implementing now, changing classes from 30 minutes to 45 minutes. But I know that this is a very mixed topic for a lot of people. But a lot of people very much prefer the previous time slot, and a lot more people enjoy this time slot too. And if I had to play, I have to pick a place for myself. I'm somewhere in the middle, I guess. Though
Can
I
you
know you said you were in favor of longer time slot, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I don't want always longer time slot for every classes.
Yes,
I feel
yes.
like there are some classes I'm just gonna be
That
like,
could fit.
you know what, you can just give me 15 minutes, cause all you're gonna do is just like show some slides online anyway, and
Hmm.
it's not so different. Whereas some classes
Right.
is like really good to have extra time,
Really huge. Yeah.
like math.
Math is definitely the biggest
Math
one.
is always gonna be
I'd agree.
something that it's gonna concern everyone because it's a required course.
And I guess having somebody, well, it's less about the explanations in math, I guess, because you can read an explanation anywhere and still absorb the same information from a teacher. But you get that walkthrough that a teacher does when they're solving a question, and you really absorb the information better that way. Like, sure, you can do the same through videos like on Khan Academy too, but when your teacher does it, it's way more personalized to what you need and what he wants to teach you in that scenario.
Yeah, and I mean like
It's a very efficient setting. Mhm.
And like I like things like Khan Economy. You don't have to wait 10 days for an email response. You want to ask them a question.
Right. Yeah.
Although it's not
They
to
might not even respond to.
although not to say that's not like some teachers. I'm sorry. What
You
did I
know.
say? I'm sorry. I didn't say anything.
Nah, don't
Uh,
worry. Math, and I also want to add, I know you don't take this class too, but chemistry also heavily benefits from the extended class time for the same reasons as math.
yeah.
Like
I mean, of course. I
we have a lot of like.
like
Mhm.
chemistry is like part of math itself.
Yeah.
So
And the style of questions are somewhat similar too when it comes to ones that involve calculations, and you can have your teacher there just to show you the steps that are necessary to properly answer a question.
mhm, certainly. And I do feel like in some particular other classes, although this may not seem like a class that you would need a lot of like in class sound, and some might say that this class is like half the time just reading a book anyway, and of course I'm talking about English. Um,
I figured it out.
but like since the unit, at least that I'm in right now, it's poetry, and since
Mhm.
of course I suck at poetry, not only do I suck at
Oh,
it, I also kind of dislike it
don't dislike it.
because poetry is the least straightforward form of text ever.
Yes,
Like honestly,
it is confusing.
I could look at some Egyptian hieroglyphics and understand it better than some poetry I have to read.
I mean, at least with your Egyptian hieroglyphics, it's like very straightforward matter. Like you
Yeah, I
either don't
mean,
know or you know. And in poetry, there's like, oh, you can know this, you can do this too, you can do this, and it's kind of hard to land on one answer. Well, not
yeah,
land on one answer. You can land on
and
answers, but there's I guess this might just be me, but there's always this element of doubt, this element that it might just not make sense at the end, and just
yeah,
get.
I mean, certainly. I mean, sometimes when I get like a poetry, like printout from a teacher, and like this was before like online class, and even in online classes, especially, sometimes it's some like weird line indents, like every like 5 lines,
Oh, I know.
and like sometimes I have to wonder, is this the author's intention or is this a PDF
They just
error?
printed it wrong.
Yeah, PDF error. And I just
But I,
cannot decide because it can become both, and then again sometimes end up over analyzing things.
hmm
And I feel
hmm
like these class sounds, especially with units in English where you have to do some intricate analyzation where class discussion and sharing ideas between other students is important. Having more class time is going to be hugely beneficial.
mm mm. And the same is, I guess the same can apply to my own English class, but it's less about having a teacher like provide you with like options to go through, but for analyzing, because I'm taking IB literature SL, and we're analyzing literary text here. It's very helpful to have discussions with your classmates too. Like you get way more perspectives that way rather than the ones you have uh, from your own personal reading, and that allows you to form like a more coherent picture of what a story might be about and what the author's message is. Because I presented one idea about identity once about a story, and another person managed to tie that into the concept of gender politics and also all the way to the fact that we should give more trust to children. And I felt those were connections that I probably wouldn't have ever made if I didn't hear it from my classmates themselves.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. And I'm sure that concept also expands into like other subjects also. Hmm.
Oh, and also just for clarification about poetry, though, I may dislike poetry, but I also like appreciate the artistry in it. I just do you have to do you have to like some you don't have to like something to respect it or understand why it's good, right?
I mean, certainly that is something. I mean, like, obviously there are like a bunch of people who probably like listen to like foreign music, and then the
Mm.
language is like they don't understand it. But at
Yeah.
the same time, I've seen people who are like really, really, really into it, and despite them not understanding, they can appreciate like other aspects of those
Right,
from
right,
like
right,
music
right.
videos. Like instead of the lyrics, maybe they appreciate the dance or like the choreography.
Choreography, yeah. But on the topic of difficulty, though, do you mind if I stray this to a question I've been pondering, I guess, but more so, but okay, it's about the difficulties of the Ivy diploma. We were talking about the difficulties of understanding poetry, but do you think, but on the concept of the Ivy diploma itself, do you think we can say that there's a difficulty when it comes to the vagueness as well of, well, some of their things?
The vagueness. What are you talking about?
Hmm. Well,
The
I don't know if
vagueness.
you have this in your classes, and I don't mean this as a criticism, but when it comes to questions that they offer,
Hmm.
sometimes they can be phrased in the way that just leaves you scratching your head for a minute and then writing down all you know because there isn't much of a clear direction.
I have no idea. I don't.
And that might just be me then.
I mean,
It's an it.
what class is that? I mean, if it's something that's weird like literature, then I'm not too
I
relatable.
mean, I mean that in a class like biology or with the question prompts that they give.
Yeah, I mean, like, give me like some examples. Like, what kind of
Mm,
questions?
well, for example, they ask you, okay, bio in IB biology they follow a mark scheme, correct? And in the mark schemes they have questions that are just about 5 words, such as explain the process of dot 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 dot. Explain the process of well, cell respiration is a pretty straightforward one, but explain explain plant growth, for example. Explain plant growth. There, you can go on so many different branching paths when they ask you something simple like explain plant growth, and if it's something like 8 points, you're kind of confused at what really constitutes as a point for the mark scheme because it's not like you were studying the mark scheme beforehand. You were studying the concept, and if you leave out a point that you didn't think was necessary in your answer, you would have been deducted deducted a point from the mark scheme. And it's what I'm saying is it's not really a holistic view at, well, how much you know, but more so one that tackles the fine details of a mark scheme.
I'm a little bit lost here, but I
Yeah,
do, but I do kind of get what you're saying sometimes.
mhm.
Like, in
But like I said, this might also just be a me issue that I'm bringing up here.
no, I mean, certainly, I do think that a lot of people can like write a bit too much because the questions are like let's say like in economics, some country bans a trade from another country, and then it's like evaluate the economic impact of this ban on the country. and then you can go on many things. But with most of the mark scheme, for at least for in like economics and business that I have looked at, and in the like grading criteria is looking at past papers and like the mini mark schemes I have at the end for you to
Hmm.
view, many of them, although they do give very specific examples, many of them, all these like long like 8 to 10 mark questions in the end, they do have like a marking where they will let the teachers themselves evaluate the answers, and if any other relevant answers are
I see.
suitable
I
for the
see.
question, then that is still going to account for point. Now, of course, there's might be some like requirements, like if you're gonna talk about plant growth, you might need to define what I don't know, define what a plant is, or define what growing is, or if you're gonna explain the process of, I don't know, plants drinking water, you might have to like define what
Water.
water is,
Yeah.
or like
Yeah.
define the different parts of how plants drink water, and yeah, I think I'm
But it
sure
also.
if the big idea of your answer is correct, it's only the process of defining and explaining the little details that make up your question that will give you that sort of answer, I suppose.
Mhm. But I want to take a look at this from a bigger picture too, because there are some classes that grade your papers on a very holistic view rather than a mark scheme. Classes like IB psychology, for example, take things straight from uh, take things straight from the examiner's holistic experience of your paper, rather than following a set mark scheme like in biology. And for a class like biology, at least, I want to somewhat argue that, well, a holistic grading system would be more beneficial for it. And do you feel like any of your classes would benefit from a more holistic grading system? Like looking at the paper at a whole as a whole rather than using a mark scheme? I don't know which of your classes use a mark scheme, but just in general, that's the premise of my question here.
I feel like every single class uses a mark scheme, and if a class doesn't use a mark scheme, I feel like you're missing on something.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I mean, yeah, okay, a mark scheme, but it's a very specific kind of mark scheme that just like lists down the things you have to include to get the marks, rather than just reading your paper and looking at what you understand and assigning you marks depending on the response you gave, rather than whether or not you fit what labels they want you to include down.
So what are you asking me again? I'm a little bit lost again.
Mm, let's let's take a let's take something like math, for example, a class that we both share. There's one answer that they want at the end, and they also, I mean, I think our class doesn't really look at the process of working, but other math classes look at the work that you did to get to that answer too. But that one answer, if you want the correct point, it's going to be a very objective look at it, and it's going to be standardized for each student. Or for a class like psychology, the examiner doesn't have one answer that they're looking for, but rather they're going to look at your paper as a whole. They're going to look at the essay you wrote as a whole and judge whether or not they think it's worthy of a 7 or a 6, rather than just assigning a 7 because you wrote down one correct answer. And that's the distinction between holistic and, I guess, mark scheme grading system that I'm going at here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If that makes more sense to you.
You're going on this thing. What do you want from me?
I'm just wondering, like, do you think any of your classes would benefit from moving over to one of the other systems? Because I know that the IB diploma and its different classes utilizes these two different scales for grading assessments.
Um, I feel like everything's all fair and dandy. Everything's
Mm.
that I've been grading. I don't feel like
Yeah, and that's perfectly fine
there
too.
needs to be a particular change. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I guess this kind of more holistic look is better reserved for things like IAs or EEs as well, rather than an examination. Because when they're looking at your EE, they're looking at it as a whole and assigning a grade because of the quality that they experience reading it. Hmm.
The quality that
Which,
they experience reading it.
well, the quality of the essay when they, well, read through it. Yeah. But it also brings topic of deadlines having been due last week.
Well, that's an internal deadline. Don't freak out.
That
The
that
other
is that
people
is
who
an
are
internal
listening this,
deadline.
and it's not like the majority of the people at this school turn in at that time anyway.
Right, right, right. But that also brings up an interesting point of whether or not this independence that this independence that IB diploma students have is, I guess, a beneficial thing.
The beneficial thing.
A beneficial thing because I could see both upsides and downsides to giving this freedom of choice to the IB students for when they want to meet a deadline.
Giving them a choice.
Well, essentially, yes. It's what the internal deadlines kind of mean. It's ones that they put down for us to finish it by.
I do feel
But
like
I know,
that. I do feel like that sort of thing loses its meaning when people get extensions and stuff because I feel like with people being knowing that they're able to get extensions, they're less lenient to meet that specific deadlines, and of course, you know, they always have that thing to rely back on. But
mm-hmm.
in the final deadline, of course, they're not going to have that fallback, and in any futures colleges, you're not going to be able to do that. At least from what I've heard from a few other people. So, what do you think?
Productivity. I
What about
mean,
productivity?
when I think about it, discipline. Well, I wouldn't use the word discipline, but proper time is a difficult thing to come by for a lot of people. And I'm wondering, like, what do you think? Oh, I got this quote from something one time, and it says that at a school, an education should be teaching you how to learn, and how to learn rather than teaching you the core content subjects of what you need to learn. Essentially, teaching you the habits of learning rather than teaching you content itself, and that the not the ethics, but the habits that you developed are going to benefit you far more than what you actually learn in an academic setting.
Oh, that's a hot take. It's like that.
That that is a hot take, but I did hear it from something one time,
Yeah,
and
perhaps it's the
it's another.
quote of teach a person how to fish.
Oh, right, right,
They'll
right.
like live
Hmm.
for a long time, but
Something
then
similar to that.
give them a fish so they'll eat for a meal.
Hmm. But this is probably going way too deep into taking a look at the education system. So I'll reel back a little bit.
Are you back to where though? Are you gonna
Reel back to where? A little something more lighthearted. What's your favorite? Well, favorite is one thing. Well, what do you think makes a class fun? Okay, that's a very subjective question to ask somebody.
Well,
But
for like someone who complains a lot about vague questions, you yourself give a lot
yeah,
of vague
I'm sorry.
questions,
I'm
you know?
sorry. Whoops.
Yeah, perhaps you come with a mark scheme and then give it to me.
Let's go. I don't know.
Anyhow, but bringing the concept of time management, that does bring like a very interesting point of time management, and I do feel like, just in my opinion, the leniency of the ease of it, of how it is easy, at least for here, to like modified schedules kind of makes the concept of time management lose its meanings a bit because
Mm,
you always feel like you have something to fall back on. You have
right,
like an
right.
extension to fall back on, and I
Hmm.
don't feel like that's a good thing to.
Or at least for like the future to come, because these things aren't going to be permanent in, well, any future career setting when
Yeah,
the
I
stakes are
mean,
much higher.
let's say for example, you get called into like a hearing, and if you're like 2 days late for a hearing, They're not gonna be like, oh no, 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 it's fine, it's fine. They're gonna be like guilty, go to jail or something. But
Though that is sort of an unrealistic example.
I have
But
no
yeah.
idea how judge and court work.
I guess the punctuality is a skill. I don't really know. Well, it's dependent on culture, is one part that I understand too.
How so?
In psychology, at least, we have these different things called cultural dimensions, and in cultural dimensions, essentially define well are like trends that we look at, like patterns that we look at across different cultures. And one such pattern across different cultures that we've come to standardize is pace of life and the rate at which we take our lives. Like some people are very, very
Um,
punctual. Like some cultures, like Germany and more Eastern Asian cultures, are very punctual with time management, while some other Western ones or American cultures are more lax and more willing to just go with the flow when it comes to a time management perspective.
that's just kind of like that's why. I mean, I feel like that's why America is in shambles right now. But who am I to say? Uh,
Oop.
if anything, I mean, being on
But
time is not just a thing that concerns about yourself.
it concerns the other person too.
Yes, exactly.
Hmm.
I mean, I've
And
I've read like a
I know you to be a very punctual. Well, from what I've known of you, you're a very punctual person. But I want to know how this kind of developed as well.
how this kind of developed.
How this mentality of yours develops? Like, was it just another aspect of culture that you grew up with, or was this something you found as a necessity growing up, or something that you trained or instilled into yourself?
A necessity instead. Wow, it's like trying to like dig into my brain.
More or less.
I mean, I don't really feel like it's that complicated of a thing. I just feel
Hmm.
like let's say I I schedule something, and then it's better to be early and on time rather than to be late.
Yep.
That's just my thing, you know.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I don't know how to analyze myself. I'm not a psych student. I just want to make money out of people.
Is that what you think we do in psychology?
I
Just
mean,
like break down like the internal mechanisms of our brain.
yeah, you're
Oh,
like breaking down
yeah, I'm just
internal
dissecting my
brain stuff,
classmates
and
every class.
you guys are also like breaking down daily from whatever you guys are learning about.
Oh yeah. Well, when it comes to punctuality too, that also brings up. Oh yeah, this is a topic we've covered before, but on the idea of free time, like, what do you think are hmm, what are some of the most relaxing hobbies for you right now? Let's go with that.
Relaxing hobbies for me.
Yeah, ones that you take on to, well, after you're done with your IB work to get away from stress that it kind of
After
puts
I'm done with my
on
work, that word exists. I didn't
you.
know. I don't know what done means.
Or well, just to get away and like give yourself some peace of mind sometime.
I mean, there's like many things that I do in a combination, but in general, it's just something that I would say like enjoy, just like doing it casually at my own pace. And although I know everyone that is fake, but playing like a little small instrument without, you know, having to be concerned about if I get too good at this instrument, I'm gonna be sent to a concert. It's just like, hey, I'm gonna play at my own pace, and if I
Oh
learn it
yeah.
or not, then if I learn this quickly, then good for me. If I learn it slowly, then maybe I should try learning something else in the meantime before coming back to whatever I was trying to learn.
So oh yeah. So that kind of puts a lot of the relaxing aspects to music, or I guess ones I'm most more or less unfamiliar with. I mean, I have been. I want to expand more on that idea though of, do you think you need to put yourself through hell first to find relaxation on the other side? Like this comes from the whole prospect of the of peace of mind when you're relaxing in the IB diploma too. Do you feel like you need to like meet a set quota of work before you can bring yourself to relax and do something that you enjoy without having that nagging feeling in your mind?
I mean, certainly there's gonna be some sort of presence of, I don't know. There's gonna be some feeling that, hey, you still got it's work to do. Maybe you should do it. But at the same time, I feel like I can very much accurately um approximate the amount of time I need for different tasks. So I'm not the
Yep,
biggest.
yep, yep.
I'm not concerned about that much.
Which is why I said there's like a set quota of work that you need to do before you feel like you can relax for a day. And I know that's definitely different from a lot of people. But I feel like without meeting a standard that I set for myself, uh, I I at least like won't be able to bring myself to enjoy what I want to enjoy at the end of it all, because I know that it feels like I'm kind of guilty for something. and, and that's kind of what I mean by just nagging at the back of my head.
Oh, good God!
So
Is this what IB does to students?
is it?
This is quite sad.
No, I feel like I'd have the same thing going on too for just about like regular classes as well. It's just the concept of making the most of your free time and making the most of your work time. And when it comes to finding a like if you need a very superficial like motivation to do work, like you can go for a very hedonistic view and just say that it's to enjoy your free time more.
Hey, know what?
Hedonistic, it's to
Can
just like hedonistic means to just derive just worldly pleasures that
okay?
make you feel pleasure rather than
You
like
turn
fulfill your
into
interest.
one word that you need to define for me into two words. So, can you talk can you talk in English and not
Okay,
Aristotle, please?
let's go English. Uh, well, if
That's a bit
like if you're
racist.
purely just seeking pleasure and enjoyment for something, you could maximize that by, I guess, forcing your body to get rid of all the issues plaguing it first, before just being at peace and being able to really put your mind. It's kind of the like the phrase "work hard, play hard," or "play hard, work hard." I don't quite remember how it goes, but just an idea like that. And I've been using it in my work. I've been using it when I'm down, or not down. I've been using it where I'm just like a bit spent. Like when I'm tired and a bit spent and I still have work to do, I kind of use it as like one of the final pushes that keeps me going through a workload that I've set for myself.
Hmm.
But I don't know. Again, this is just me speaking my own personal opinions on like the philosophy of getting work done.
Whatever works for you, buddy.
Hmm.
Anyhow, speaking of done, I am going to close this episode out
Alrighty.
because otherwise, I will not be able to draw a thumbnail that can accurately represent every single topic talk in this video.
All
Um,
right.
I'm just gonna draw some sort of like clock with like some broken things since we talk about time a lot.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that's gonna be it for this episode. We hope you three listeners have enjoyed. Please leave a comment about your opinions, leave a like, and share this to your other friends, or don't because you probably lose friends along the way if you do share. Um, but yeah, hope we have been a good casual conversation, although not a very casual topic.
So yeah, not very casual topics.
Anyhow, goodbye.